Hey, everybody. Gail Craft here from the Empowering Process podcast. And today's conversation is going to be with Sarah Mayland. And she is the founder of Inside Out Transformations. And her mission is to empower women to love themselves and their bodies so that together we as women can empower the next generation to do the same. Sarah is going to talk about how she found so much ease and flow when she learned how to release the how. Welcome, Sarah. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I am well. How are you?
I honestly, I have to be honest. I have been feeling off lately, and so I wrote a little post about feeling untethered.
Mm,
Right? And allowed myself to cry and not to try and figure it out, just to be in the feeling. Right. And this leads into a lot about what we're going to talk about because I didn't try to figure out what was going on. I didn't try to figure out how to fix it. I didn't try to give it a name, right? Or give it a purpose, even. I just allowed it to be witnessed. And
I love
so,
that so
yes,
much.
yes, and so I talk in my post a little about, the voice creeps in and just letting it creep in and creep out, not even giving it much be in the now. So talk to us a little bit about, first of all, your spiritual awakening. Um,
Mm, I
and
know.
then how you discovered to forget about the how.
I would say probably the awakening and the discovering how to let go of the how is an ongoing process.
Thank
It's
you.
not just a thing that happened. I really see the spiritual journey and the healing journey as one that is continually unfolding and developing. And so I'm hesitant to say that I have somehow arrived.
No, there's no arrival. So thank you for
Right.
bringing that up. So listeners who are seeking the answer, you're going to be disappointed because
Yeah.
there are answers, right? But
Yeah.
it's an evolution, an
It's an
evolution.
evolution, and there are answers as, I feel like, as we need them and as we can handle them. And I know so many people that I work with can get really I don't want to say stuck, but kind of like, wait, I thought I already healed through this. Why is it showing up again? What's the problem here? And I always say you did. Like you healed through the layer of it that was available to you at the time. And
Right.
what that has done is clear the way for the next layer to come forward. And so I think, especially with the process of learning to release the how, that is some work that I'm still very actively doing. It's definitely something that I'm much more comfortable with, that I can do more easily than I used to. But it's always for me a work in progress. And I think that's because a how gives us some sense of safety, right? Like you used the term earlier, untethered. And that can feel, for some people, really unsafe to not have some sort of anchor. And having a how can be a really good anchor, right? It's, oh,
And like an anchor, you can
it can
get
also
stuck.
keep you stuck. Exactly. It's kind of this double-edged sword, right? On one hand, an anchor can help you feel really safe, and on the other hand, it can keep you really stuck. And so for me, what I have found is not necessarily letting go of the idea of having an anchor, because I think that an anchor, especially someone like me who my chart is very strongly ruled by Saturn, I love a good anchor. But what what are we attaching ourselves to? What is that anchor? And does is that supportive rather than restrictive? Because I think that's something that comes in very strongly, kind of the two sides of Saturn energy in general. On one hand, it can give us a beautiful structure and foundation and protection and something from which we can build and grow, but not used or worked with in a healthy way, it can also be something enormously constricting and restrictive and things like that.
For me, my experience has been, the seasons. There's a time to be anchored, right? And climb to the shore, and then there's times to get back in the boat and unmoor and allow yourself to go. For me, one of the things that I said in my short post today was this untethering for me is an experience of in between. Right? It means that I have let stuff go, because that's our process is, well, here's this coming up. It's time to, love it, learn from it, let it go. Love it, learn from it, let it go. So I've let go of stuff, but I haven't arrived at the transformation yet.
Right.
Right. And so it's like I'm between the breaths.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. It is. It's totally okay to be there. And I think the instinct is often when we are in that kind of liminal space, right? Is we want to know and we want to solve. And it can be so hard to just let ourselves be where we are right now.
So share with us, if you will, some of the excuse me, signs that you have had that have confirmed for you that you have evolved to a different level of awakening.
They change over time, and sometimes they are very big signs and sometimes they are little tiny ones. I will give a couple of examples because they're really cool in my humble opinion. The first big one that I remember was back in 2021. My husband at the time and I were looking to buy a house, and this was at the height of this crazy housing situation that we had going on in the US, where people were paying like 6 figures over asking, sight unseen, no inspections, things like that. And I remember going to look at this one house and asking for a sign before I went in. I specifically was looking for an orange ladybug. And I go in, I look at this house, and I just have this feeling like this is the right house. But of course, I didn't see the sign that I had asked for. And so I was like, okay, but I listened to and I trusted that it felt right. And so I shared it with my husband, and we set up another time to go look at it together. And that night, I'm laying in bed and I hear this voice, and this is like my first ever experience with clairaudience. I hear this voice that's like, why are you asking me for a sign when you know that I speak to you through your intuition? And I'm like, oh. And so we ended up moving forward on the house, and there were no competing bids. We got it for 30 grand under asking, 2 inspections, and we had the owner fix a bunch of stuff, which again was unheard of at that time in the housing market. And so it was just easy. And I think that is kind of the story that I've learned to tell myself over the past few years is alignment is always easy. It just flows when I am intuitively aligned. It doesn't mean that like necessarily taking the action is easy or feeling the feeling is easy. Like it can be really scary, it can be really painful, but things just flow when
And
I am
when you
aligned
don't
with my
resist it,
intuition.
the It's not easy, but when you don't resist it, it's not as hard.
Right. Right. And I think, yeah, again, when I'm saying easy, what I mean is that it flows, and that some of the roadblocks tend to fall away. I mean, one of them too was when I finally asked for a divorce, and I had been hedging for a while. I had been like, okay, I'll hang in there for a little longer because I'm worried about this other thing. And finally, when I said, no, this is what I want, I am not changing my mind, and I spoke it out, our divorce was done, complete, final in 6 months. We didn't have to go to court. Like, we drew up everything ourselves, and it was just easy. um
It doesn't have
Another
to be
one was
angry. It
actually,
doesn't have to be hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Another one was actually the house that I'm in right now, which I'm getting to move. I'm getting ready to move out of, but I had been researching places for a long time when my marriage was wrapping up, and I had found this one place that I really liked and was really excited about, and they rented it to someone else. And I remember being so upset, and I was just like, I don't know where I'm going to live, but I know it's going to be okay. I will find a place. And then I happened to be driving around and looking at a neighborhood of like another house I looked at, and I had an option to turn left or right. And if I turned right, I would go back to the home that I was in. But if I was like, let me turn left and just look around the neighborhood. And when I turned left, I saw this house with a big red for rent sign in front that had not shown up in any of my searches. And I'm driving. I'm like, oh, that's cute. And I keep like driving, and I hear this, you need to turn around and call that number in my head. So I'm like, okay. So I turn around and I call the number. And 3 days later, I signed a 2-year lease. Yeah.
You know, the universe has a sense of humor, right? Um, it's a child in a playful way. That's what, when I say child, it's childlike, not childish.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to go on a psilocybin journey with someone that I truly trust and adore. And my intention, because you said intentions, was, am I hearing you or
Mm-hmm.
am I fooling myself? Right. Well, after I went through seriously some portals that included the Eye of Isis or whatever, imagine, if you will, 1700s carnival. And there's this ringmaster with this big hat and his tails comes in front of me and says, you want to know us? And then all of the characters from the circus come flying at me, right? The fat lady, it was like the clown car. He just kept coming,
Oh,
right?
that's
And I'm sitting there laughing, right? And finally said, okay, I get it.
that's a hoot. I love it.
Right, right. So it's kind of like, what more? It's like you're with the ladybug. What more do you want? Right,
Yeah.
right. Because I act on what I instinctively believe I'm hearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that the voices are different from the ego voice and all the others. um and I also know that I have a board of directors, and the board of directors are not the universe. The board of directors are the different archetypes of this human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the frightened me, it's the cling me, it's the gesture me, it's, all of these roles I've played in my life, trying to get attention and put their 2 cents in,
Yeah.
right? And so when I talked about being untethered today, I took the untethered self and allowed it to sit at the board of directors table with us. right? Because it
Yeah.
wants its voice to be heard with the crowd. So,
Yes.
that's basically what I do. It's like, okay, it's time for a meeting. And, so and so wants to be heard. So, call to agenda,
Here's
right?
the talking stick.
Right. Right. Here's the talking stick if you want to do a woman's circle, right? And not that I'm looking for resolutions or an answer. Sometimes it's like a child having a temper tantrum,
Yes.
right? That's not source. That is me. This
Mhm.
ego me, right?
Yeah.
Um, not happy because I'm not giving it its due recognition.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you talk about this because a lot of the work I do is not so much with the archetypes, but with the different emotions. As a psychotherapist, I work a lot with emotions, and I think about it kind of the same way. Like they're these little children inside of us,
Mhm.
and anyone who's ever been around little kids knows that if you try to ignore them or push them away, they will just get louder and more intense until their needs are met. And I love what you said about like taking this untethered part and having it be at the table, because I think what can happen is the uncomfortable parts of ourselves, or the uncomfortable version of ourselves, or the uncomfortable emotions, it's so easy to push them away and to say, I don't want to hear what you have to say. Love and
Or
light
let
all
me
the
solve
time.
you, or find
Yeah.
the root cause of you, or
Yeah.
right. And it's just
Right.
there is no root cause.
Right. Or what I
Right.
come across so much is people who just want to avoid it completely, either because it's too uncomfortable or because they've had this like love and light principle drilled into them, where they think that if they connect with this more difficult part, that they're somehow messing up their energy or manifesting something bad. Um and I'm sure that you have found, and I have found as well, that when you give all of those parts a voice, often the intensity of them immediately dies down because they just want to be heard.
Right.
They just want to be seen and acknowledged. And also, when we push those parts away, the message that we are sending to ourselves is this part of you is unacceptable,
Or unimportant,
or unimportant,
or
or
unworthy.
unwanted, or
Yes.
doesn't deserve a voice. And often that perpetuates a lot of the conditioning and the trauma that we've been carrying as children. And so by learning how to sit with those parts, welcome them in, give them a voice, and also take care of them, right? Not to fix them or solve them, but to say, hey, I'm here with you and you are welcome here and your voice matters to me. That what we are doing in that moment is showing ourselves that all parts of us are worthy of a voice and worthy of love.
You know, I want to share a story with you because it's really interesting, because I am not interested in the stories. In fact, I work with clients to detach the story from the emotion that you're having right now, right? But in doing that, I still get to the root cause, and I'll give you an example. Because I love that, like the woman I literally finished with Friday. Um, she's definitely the dark night of the soul, going through a hard time, and as a shaman, couldn't get out.
Mm-hmm.
So we work together, and it doesn't matter what her stories are, but at one point, finally, after we detached, I said, so your history has shown you that the only way someone can show you love is for you to be ill and for them to take care of you, because her
Mm,
father was a doctor.
yeah.
And right. And so she had made herself physically, mentally, and emotionally a wreck because she wasn't getting the attention she wanted from her spouse.
Yeah.
Right. And so what happens is you get sicker, right? And sicker. And she was
Yeah.
ready to check out, quite frankly.
Mm,
Um, and so our next step was, let's learn to love yourself enough that you won't need anything from anyone to feel worthy of love in such a healthy way that you will no longer have to be sick to find it.
Yeah.
Right. But we do this stuff not being aware of it. And so I do want to find the trigger for what is going on so that we can make a healthier you. That's part of the alchemizing process. But I don't care about the story. Like, I don't care about the stories that were attached to that. It was an experience that she believes is who she is. So she identified with being sick together.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we all do this stuff. Right. My father was a hypochondriac. So I had identified with, for me to show love, I had to be with someone who was broken one way or another. Right. Ooh.
Yeah. I know. It's
True.
heavy stuff, and it's powerful stuff.
Yep. Yep. So share with me what changed in your life dramatically when you stopped trying to figure out how. And I want to add a caveat to that. I am a type A personality, very successful project manager in corporate. Could make stuff happen that no one else could get moving. And what do you mean? Because I trusted my intuition, and then it happened. So to break the how for me was a major undertaking. That's what implementation is all about. But it also had a major positive impact on my life. So what's an example for you of when you realized that you weren't figuring it out anymore and it was happening, like the house?
Yeah, I think again, it's an ongoing process, right? But most recently, I'm getting ready to move. Like you can see behind me, all of these boxes on my bookshelf. And for quite a while, I knew that I was moving because my lease is up at the place I'm in at the end of April. We are talking, it's now the end of February. So I have about 2 months. And until like a week ago or so, I didn't know where I was going. And at first, it was scary. And I was definitely into a how. I definitely wanted some answers. I'm also in the midst of some career changes in terms of psychotherapy licensure and getting that in order, and it might be happening in a different state than I originally thought. And so there's been a lot of mix up there, and that for me was like, oh, I'm going to get this licensure done at this time and in this place. And then by this time, I will have built up enough psychotherapy clients that I can afford to do this.
Right.
And so I had this whole how that I didn't realize I had, which was based on a lot of ifs. And over the last few months, those ifs started to kind of crumble away. Things weren't happening on the timeline that I expected. And I started freaking out a little bit. And then I thought about it, especially with the house. And I was like, I don't have to know where I'm going yet or how it's going to work. I can still pack because I know that I'm going, and
Oh,
I
I
don't
do.
and I don't have to have all the answers about it yet. And so for me, one of the things that really helps me release the how is by shifting my attention, shifting my focus to what is concrete. What do I already know? I do already know that I'm going somewhere. Don't know where that is yet. That's okay. But I can start packing. I can still take meaningful action in the direction I want to go, even if I don't have all the answers. And that has really allowed me to let go of clinging to that how. And then the other thing that I do is I ask for help. I ask myself, I ask my guides. Um, just like, let me know when one of the other, I hit another roadblock on this path of licensure and all of that. I had a little come to Jesus with the universe, and I was like, listen, I'm tired of this. Like, I'm
I
tired
think
of
we've all had that in the past week or so. A lot of
yeah,
people I've spoken to has had exactly that come to Jesus conversation with the
yeah.
universe.
And I'm like, if this is not my path, then show me my path.
Thank
And if
you.
it
That's
is my path,
exactly
then get
right.
rid of these roadblocks because I'm done
Right.
with it.
Right. And I've literally said, stop effing around. Right.
Yeah.
And let's do it now. And I've said, I don't need to know where or what. Just put a path in front of me and I'll step on it. But put
Yeah.
the path in front of me. I promise I'll
Yeah.
step on it.
Yeah.
Right. Oh,
And
that's so
it's
funny.
yeah, and it's so hard because we want to see the whole path, right? I think that is what the how is. It's looking at the path. And at this point, I'm like, I just need the next step.
Yeah.
Like and what I found is when I let that happen, things fall into place. Like I hit this roadblock. I talked to I was telling a friend of mine about it, and she's like, Sarah, I actually know someone in another state who is looking for therapists in her practice, and she's be happy to connect with you. So I connected with her, and literally over the course of the week, I now have almost all of my licensure requirements ready for a different state. That's going to happen like that. And it was like, hey, I think, another piece of this is also recognizing that when there are roadblocks, they are there for a reason. And not that we necessarily need to read into everything or assign a meaning to everything, because that can be exhausting and
And
but
really ridiculous.
and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And recognizing, if I thought this was the direction I'm going and I keep hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, perhaps I need to be alert to the idea that this is no longer aligned. And that's something that I've really have to consciously remind myself of, is something, just because something was aligned at a certain time does not mean that it is always aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. And my big lesson a long time ago, but it was huge, was if I make a commitment, right? For me, integrity meant I stick with the commitment. And there was a commitment I made one time, and every sign the universe could possibly throw in my path to not do this. I mean, my cat, as I was traveling to my destination, was screaming like a banshee. My cat drives like a dog in the car, looks out the window, walks around, right? And he's screaming at me, right? In
Yeah.
California, it snowed, right? I'm not kidding. I had the craziest things happen. And then I thought, well, I can make it, I can make it work. And the universe is screaming at me, turn around, turn around, turn around, right? The movers, there were problems with the move. I mean, everything.
Wow.
And so what I learned was integrity is staying in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And what felt right when I first approached it, what happened is the situation had changed and I didn't realize it had changed. Right? Until it was too late. When the universe says no, integrity means you honor that.
Yeah.
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 And you don't have to explain why.
What was that?
And you don't have to explain why. Like I would have had no explanation. It just be, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, when it's been amazing to see, like when you get a yes, the yes is so loud. And also now no's are are
Loud.
so loud. Well, like I remember like buying my car. I have this like adorable little white Mini, and And I was looking at like a Honda HR-V or something, which was about the same price, but on paper was a better deal and kind of the more responsible buy. It's cheaper to maintain, better gas mileage, all of that. And I got in the car, I was test driving it, and everything in my body was like, no, like it was like I was jumping out of my skin. And I remember stopping on the way from the dealership at a grocery store to buy my son chicken nuggets because it's like all he eats. And I had kind of asked, like, okay, you know, I'm thinking it's the white mini. That's the sense I'm getting. If that's the case, show me, show me. And I get out of the grocery store. I have my car door open. I'm putting the groceries in. I close the door. And right next to me, that was not there a minute ago, was a white mini. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's loud yeses and loud nos. And it's really cool.
Oh, it's really cool. Sometimes, I'll be wondering something or not sure about something, and I'll be in the conversation because I am in conversation all day long with people, whether it be with a client or networking, and I get the answer from the person I'm talking to. They will say something, and I'll be like, "Oh, thank you."
This literally just happened to me like 2 days ago. Where the state that I have been originally pursuing licensure in for this therapy practice that I'm really excited to work for, I've been getting so many signs that this practice is just not ready yet. Like the owner, who is this wonderful human, she's kind of building the plane as she's flying it, and everything is just getting really held up. And on Monday, I was in this meeting with her, and I had a sense going in like, oh, okay, that state is North Carolina, or there's other state that's happening much faster, easier, cheaper is Pennsylvania. And I was like, I have a feeling going into this meeting that I'm going to have a much clearer sense of like a confirmation of what is aligned. And I found out that the person who's supposed to supervise me doesn't even have their supervisor license yet. And I was like, okay, thank you for that information. And, old Sarah would have been very distressed by this. But at this point, I was like, thank you for the confirmation. Now I know where to place
Right,
my energy.
right, right. And it's energy, right? And I have said forever, a body in motion stays in motion. One of the examples I used with a client recently is the universal GPS.
Mm,
What happens with, I do this all the time. If I know where I'm going, I still put my GPS on because I like the wake up, take the next turn so I can really like zone out if I want to.
yeah,
And sometimes the GPS will say, like, if when I go from San Diego to Simi Valley, it'll want to take me straight through downtown Los Angeles. And I'll be like, yeah, no, I'm going this way. Right. Now, does the GPS argue with me? Yeah, at first. Right. The universe will argue with me at first.
yeah,
And what happens when I get on the 405 instead of the 5? Recalculate.
yeah,
So the universe will recalculate, but we'll send you a detour. You miss that detour, it'll send you another detour. So it's not going to stop having your back.
right.
So just take a step. And if it's not the right one, you will be redirected.
Yeah, and you will learn. You will learn what it feels like to be out of alignment. And sometimes it's like I feel like the universe is up there and it's like I'm pushing you, I'm guiding you in this way, and it's like, no, I'm not listening. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it my way. And the universe is like, I'm going to try to redirect. I'm going to try to redirect. I'm going to try to redirect. Okay, fine, you're going this way. I guess she's going to need to learn this again. And
Right,
then we
right.
try again.
Lesson time, right? So
Yeah.
a friend of mine and I have 100% bought into this. We talk about life being a game, right? It's not, so lighten up. It's just a game.
Yeah.
And it is not a competition game. So it's not a football game. It's not a baseball. There's not a winner or a loser.
Like a choose your own adventure.
It's a choose your own adventure. It is a video game. So what happens in the video game? So people are going to be hearing this from me a lot lately because I'm like, this is like, boom. So you start a video game, you're on level 1. You're going to do really good and you might not make it through, but you learn something.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you go through it and you finally finish level 1. And when you leave level 1, you have power-ups. You earned some clues, some power-ups. And you have a clue now as to how to play the game. The level 2 is a little bit harder though, but there's clues along the way. And maybe you earn more power-ups and maybe more power, right? And then you go to level 2, a little bit harder. I mean, level 3, it's a little bit harder. So each level is a little bit more difficult. So this life experience that we're in is a level higher than the one I was in before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I mastered the one I was in before.
Yeah.
I achieved what I was supposed to have achieved in that experience. And so now I'm at a new level. So like my clients are usually going through really tough time, as are yours, right?
Yeah.
When they're done, I congratulate them on being game masters. Because if you weren't good, you wouldn't be having this competition right now,
Yeah.
or this challenge right now. And so instead of calling them lessons, they're clues. They're clues in the game. And it makes it, you're learning your lesson from being,
Right.
punished to, ooh, Nancy Drew, I've got a clue, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it makes it a little more fun because games are supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's like each time you go through it, right? Not just in lifetimes, but even in situations, right? People who have the same, for example, the same relationship cycle that keeps
Right.
playing out over and over and over again. It's each time you go through that, you learn more about yourself. You learn more about what you want and you don't want. You
Mm-hmm.
have different tools that you can use,
Yeah.
right? And some of them can be spiritual tools, like having crystal allies or plant allies or
Right.
learning astrology or tarot or connecting with your guides or whatever it may be. But it can also be emotional tools. It can also be like, material resources. Each time there are different things that you kind of bring into your chest that support you. And so it's almost like instead of a cycle that just keeps going around and around, it's like a spiral.
Right.
And yes, it may be a similar situation, but each time you're coming into it and coming out of it differently than before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did a post again a little while ago about um, ancestral trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I talked about how I played it out until I stopped playing it out,
Yeah.
right? And the first time I played it out, I learned something about me and relationships, right? The second time I played it out, it was different, but it's still there. And I learned something new about me and relationships. The third time it didn't play out, it was observed.
Mm.
Right. And that is when I realized it was ancestral trauma. Because in the observing, it's like I saw the Gestalt beads going backwards.
Yeah.
Right. And I connected the dots. I went, oh, well, let's break that right now. Yeah.
That's power. I had that actually happen last September. I ended a relationship that I was in because same thing, like I was in it for a bit and it was playing out, and then I was able to step back and observe and be like, ooh, like this is not what I
What?
want.
Oh, what the heck?
This is
What the
not what
what?
I want. And being able to step away from it before I was in it for like 10 years or something. and it was this little way that I was like, yeah, I'm not moving forward in that way anymore.
Right. Now the thing is, and I'm not suggesting people break their marriages or break their relationships, but if you have to, then do. When there are couples who are working on themselves as well as the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not lineal. It's definitely, a step ladder. One's higher, the other's lower, blah, blah, blah. But those kinds of relationships can weather the storm of ancestral trauma,
Yeah. I
right?
think there's a caveat there as long as both people are willing to work on themselves and the relationship.
That's right,
When
right.
you have one person who's like, nope, I'm not doing the work, it it's really hard to have that survive.
You
At
can.
least that's been my experience. I don't
Yeah.
want to say that as like a blanket
So yeah,
thing.
and so my experience is if I'm with someone who is not on that journey, I can only be with them for a certain season.
Yeah.
Because I will outgrow them.
Mhm.
My last serious relationship, lasted 7 years, I think, maybe 8. And by the time it was done, I would have said if I met this person today, I would have nothing to do with them. There is nothing in common here. Whereas when I first met him, there was lots in common,
Mhm.
right? Um, but and I was like, oh man, I couldn't live with this person. I couldn't, right? I just couldn't. And it doesn't mean I don't love someone or care for someone,
Right.
right? It just means that I'm changing. They're
Right.
not.
It means that you're going in a direction or at a pace that they can't or won't go. Um,
Or understand.
or understand. And
Yeah.
I think, with the clients that I've worked with and am working with, that is one of the hardest realizations that they undergo is I think often the farther you get in this work, the lonelier it becomes because there are fewer people who can be where you are with you. And I work with a lot of people who as they work with themselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally, take better care of themselves physically, that a lot of the people that they were close to either actively try to keep them stagnant as this
Yeah.
version of the person that they knew because it keeps them comfortable. Or they kind of see themselves out. But either way, it can leave people feeling like the people who are doing this work feeling like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like I'm losing these people. These friendships don't feel good to me anymore. And it's because you're they are no longer aligned with your path. And navigating that
Yeah.
loss can be challenging, but I think
And
ultimately.
it's shocking. I'm going to give a very silly example.
Mhm.
So when I was a teenager, I lived with my brother and sister-in-law. And I remember deciding to go on a diet. I had like 10 pounds to lose. Um, and there was a reason for it. And I showed up after school, and my sister-in-law had bought a dozen donuts and had them on the table.
Mm,
And I looked at her and I said, why would you even do that to me? And her response was, you don't need to lose weight.
because of course that was her decision.
Right, right, right. And I, I was what, 17, 16, 17,
Yeah.
thinking, how can someone say that to me when this was my choice? And purposely put a roadblock in my way. But
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens. And and she felt that she was doing this from love. I don't control. I don't know. Because love, some people think control is love,
Yeah.
but it was seriously a shock and a lesson to me. But it really it was a clue in the game of life, because people will do that to you on a variety of different levels. not from being vindictive. They think they're serving you. People will give you advice that is probably horrible for you, but from their perspective, they're trying to help you. Right. And so, yes, as I woke up, it became very lonely because no one in my sphere of family or influence, if you will, has a clue of what I say. My family calls me a witch. Right. Okay. So I have communities that I'm involved with, right? That are, we're all like, oh, at least we have each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I was talking to someone on Monday and she was like, how are you being supported? And I was like, I'm being supported a lot. Like I have friends that I've connected with who are in a similar place to me, but also like I have, healers that I connect with and work with where I can be poured back into and receive what I need to receive. And I think especially as women, that can be really hard for us to allow ourselves to receive. Something that I've had to work on letting go of is this idea that if I don't have to like scramble and climb and grasp and overcome 85 million roadblocks, then it somehow is not legitimate or not worth doing. And that I can't just receive, right? That everything has to be earned in a way, or that it's somehow selfish or self-absorbed if I allow myself to receive. And fortunately, I have been able to surround myself with people at this point in my life who are very comfortable with this lovely flow and exchange of pouring into each other and receiving from each other. And not that it's not this kind of keeping score tit for tat sort of thing, right? But it's just you feel when things are balanced, and having those balanced relationships and having those people that we can pour into and can pour into us is so valuable.
I can't even keep score. I find that just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because energetically, karma is immediate, but it's not a one-to-one exchange.
Right.
Right. And so if I am pouring into you, Sarah, if I'm sitting here expecting you to pour back into me, I'm missing the universe sending it this way.
Yeah.
And the universe goes, well, this is crazy.
And that's kind of a how, right? It's, oh, if I'm doing this, I am expecting this in this way. And it's like, when that happens, we end up putting the universe in a box, right? We can only see what we can see, but you're absolutely right. Like if we're pouring into someone and expecting, kind of this one-to-one reciprocation, we are blocking ourselves to all the ways that we are receiving it from everywhere else.
Absolutely.
When we are stuck on a particular how, we are limiting ourselves to all of the other options out there that we haven't even thought of yet, that what we need may work out or show up.
And what's really interesting is that the how, if we don't have a preconceived idea as to what that is, the who, the how, the what, the why, the where, we like erase them all. There's magic that comes.
Oh, so much.
So
much. And it's fantastic.
Fantabulous.
It's fantastic.
Right. And it's like, whoa. I mean, I have to say that almost the day after I had the come to Jesus conversation with the universe.
Yeah.
I got connected with this amazing community. It was like a fire hose of connection. And because I said, where is it? And the universe said, oh, okay.
Yeah, there it is.
And I was like, okay, I get it. Okay.
So I have a similar story that is very funny. So, this was back in November, and I found out on day 23 of my menstrual cycle is the day that I freak out about money. almost every month because I track. And I was having a financial freak out, and a client had asked me to do some distance Reiki for her. And I started doing the distance Reiki, and I was on like day 23, freak out day. And I found myself, and this is not me, right? But I found myself feeling a little bit salty that I was sending, doing this Reiki and like not being paid extra for it. And I'm like, and I caught myself and I was like, whoa, Sarah, hey, girlfriend, like this is not how we vibe. Like, what's going on here? And so I stopped and I got my notebook and I just started writing out, like, clearly there was a lot of fear under there. And I just wrote it all out. I was like, what's going on in here? Let's discover, let's get curious. And I wrote down everything I was worried about. And I wrote just in like all caps across the bottom of the page, I need help. And I hear from a friend of mine who is an accountant, literally like 2 hours later. I had a meeting with her and I was like, hey, I love working with you. I want to keep working with you. My finances are tight. Can we like renegotiate the rate? And I'm of course happy to change like the scope of work that you're doing for me. She immediately cut my rate by like 60% and was like, you're good. But it gets even better. I got a call from her like 2 hours later, and she was like, hey, this is going to sound out of left field, but my admin is leaving at the end of the month. I was supposed to have someone else coming on. They're not coming on. She was like, I know this isn't what you want to do long term, but would you be interested in doing it for a little while? And, it would give like some stability and that. And I was like, yeah, and we talked about it. And by the end of the same day that I wrote, I need help, huge in my notebook, within a few hours,
you shall receive.
I had a job.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, is doing admin work for an accountant what I would have normally thought of? No, completely outside of my realm of even considering. But what I found is that I actually love it. I'm meaningfully productive, and it also gives me a way to come up for air because the other work I do is so heavy. It's so in the depths.
But, and we do need to cut this, but I do want to add, understand that what you did was not ask for help. What you did in writing everything out was releasing your attachment to your fear around money.
Yeah.
And then when that energy shift was done, because you wrote it until exhaustion, you said, I need help. So again, you didn't look for the why.
Right.
Right. You just knew that you needed help. So many people, pray to God, pray to the universe, meditate on, I need the help. I need help. I need help without doing the inner work.
Yeah.
And the help is coming, but because you haven't done the inner work, you don't even see it.
And you're not in a place to receive it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it really is, a process of release, right? And so how you have rinse and repeat. I'm saying rinse and release, rinse and release,
and repeat,
release and repeat, rinse, release, repeat, rinse, release, repeat, right? Because you have to do the alchemy process.
Yeah,
you have to do that. So, Sarah, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
The best way to do it is either through my website, which is sarahmayland.com, or through the link, which I think you're going to put in the show description. And that is a link that connects people to everything that I do and offer.
That's awesome. And everybody, thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. If you love this, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, do put them in the comments. We'll get back to you. If you know somebody who maybe could benefit from this show, do share it out. And as always, please do subscribe so you know when the next episode is available. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.